You are listening to the Self-Trust Solution Podcast with Dawn Leday, episode number 125. Welcome back. Do you ever feel like you're rushing through life, checking things off your to-do list, but still falling into bed at night feeling empty and unfulfilled? Today, I'm joined by Dalit Sharer, a life and business coach who's helped thousands of people stop letting time manage them and start intentionally managing their time. Dalit combines her engineering background and deep coaching expertise to teach us how to align our time with our values, break free from procrastination, and live with purpose. If you've ever struggled with the question, why can't I seem to get everything done? This episode is for you. Welcome, Dalit.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I wanted to get a couple of things right off the bat. I am the Jewish life coach, and everybody struggles with time. So that's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to mention is that we all get to choose our time intentionally, because if we don't, time manages us. So if you can imagine a lifetime where birth, like kind of a straight line, where birth is at the beginning of that line and death is at the end of the line, we don't know how long that line is. And so when you get to manage time, you get to decide where on that line you are and how you experience time in that moment. And that's what I'm here really to teach you. I'm here to coach you on that and to make sure that you're living the best life possible.
So, what do you see most people struggle with when it comes to time?
So most people will tell me that they're very busy and yet they can't get things done. So for example, they'll say, I fall into bed at night and I feel empty and I feel depleted and my to-do list just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So what we do is we start with setting boundaries on your time, then learning to follow through on what you decided to do, and then being present in that moment as well. So I really have three kind of bubbles that we work on. And as they intersect and as they all come together, that's when we create that intentional life. But before we kind of get into it, I like to talk to my clients about their brain because, as you know, we have the prefrontal cortex and we have the primitive brain. And this plays a big role in how we show up in our life. So if you plan ahead, then you know what you're about to do and you sit down and you do it, whether it's family time, husband time, personal time, work time, whatever it is. If you planned it in advance, you know that that's what you're doing. But if you didn't plan it in advance, then the primitive brain kind of comes in and says, oh, I don't feel like doing that. Oh, I think I'll do that later on. And you'll notice that the prefrontal cortex, which is the planning piece of your mind, is not really taking charge at this point. So I really like to have the clients understand what's going on behind the scenes so they know that if they're not planning, if not they're not scheduling things on their calendar and they don't say what they're going to do, their primitive brain is going to take over. And in that moment, that primitive brain wants to exert the least amount of effort, seek pleasure, and avoid pain. And so when you put all those together, you walk away from your tasks, you walk away from your to-do list, you don't follow through, and you don't do what you want to be doing. So my previous life, I was an engineer and I worked partly in QA, and QA is quality assurance. And in quality assurance, we had this thing where we knew that you plan to do what you want to do, and then you follow the plan. And this comes in beautifully into this time management thing. If you plan to do your time, you'll take care of yourself. If you don't plan to do your time, then things will just fall apart. So same motto here. Plan your time and then follow through with your time.
So, what's one of the first things you do when someone comes to you struggling in this way with time?
Okay, so usually people will come to me and they'll say, I'm too busy. And what I want to know from them is, what does that mean, too busy? Like, what is happening that you're so busy? And oftentimes they'll tell me that they're just running around through their day and really not accomplishing anything or accomplishing a lot of things that are completely meaningless. So what I like to do with them is I like to kind of pause for a moment. Once we talk about the brain and they understand what's happening, we pause and I ask them to really examine their values. So I give them a list of values and I ask them to circle the values that are really important to them. Now, I'll just pause here and say that the values that you may have today may not be the values that you have tomorrow. But right now, we want to focus on what's top of list for you today. So they pick their top 3 values. And then I want to see how that fits into their life. And very often there's a disconnect between them because it doesn't play into their life. Another thing I like to do with values is if they're not clear, they're not sure, I ask them, what do they pray for? When they make a prayer, what do they pray for? And if they tell me things like, oh, I want to be healthy, I want my kids to be healthy, I want to make sure I have enough money, like all these things, I then go into their calendar with them and say, okay, show me where these things fit into the calendar. Show me where it's actually showing up in your calendar. And oftentimes it doesn't. It doesn't show up in the calendar. So sometimes I'll get people that will absolutely schedule things like doctor's appointments, for example, or play dates for their kids, but they will not schedule anything for themselves. And so I want to know, why is there a disconnect? Why is it so important for you to schedule kids' activities or doctor's appointments in the calendar, but you don't schedule your own time in there? And I mean, when I say schedule your own time, I mean like your own value into the calendar. So, for example, if you value family time and you also value earning a living, then I want to see where it shows up in your calendar. Does it show up in blocks of time that say, hey, this is my time to work? Or does it not show up in your calendar because you just know in the back of your mind, yeah, it's time for me to go to work? So that's really the first step that we do.
So really seeing what are your values and how does that align with how you're using your time? And if it doesn't, noticing that disconnect is where you can do the work.
Yeah. So what I tell my clients to do, or what I actually guide them to do, we do this together, is we look at their calendar and we start plugging in things. So blocks of time. So we always start with self care because I think that's the most important thing. If we don't take care of ourselves first, we are not ready to take care of everybody around us. And as moms, we often want to take care of everybody around us. So I ask them to plug in their self care. And when we talk about self care, we're not talking about dropping into bed at night, but we're talking about actually what fulfills you, what actually fills you up inside that makes you feel, oh, I'm taken care of. I'm good. I've done what I wanted to do for today or for this week. It doesn't have to be every day, it doesn't have to be every week, but you need to make sure that your calendar does have blocks of time to take care of you. And in my program, I do have a guide on what self care could look like for you. I will never tell you what self care looks like to you because obviously it's your choice, but we do work through that. So that's the first step. They put self care into their calendar. The next thing we do is we look at things like family time. If they have a family, let's figure out, when does that happen? And I'll get people who have a very, very busy family schedule where they're constantly driving their kids to activities. So, number one, I want to see if they have any time on the weekends to spend time with with their kids. And I want to know, if they don't, can we use car time, transportation time to really connect with their kids? I did have a client. She was a top lawyer in the United States. And she was a new mom, and she was traveling all over the United States to do court cases. And the court cases would be a few weeks at a time. So she worked with me on how to manage her calendar to make sure that she does get that family time fitting into her overall schedule. So, like I said earlier, if you don't have time in a week to take care of you, it's the same thing with your family. Like sometimes you travel. And so when she was traveling, she really prioritized her work time. And then when she came home, she shut out all the work time and she did not attend to it. And she set boundaries with her employer to let them know, this is my time with my family, or this is my private time. And so it worked really well for her.
It sounds like really looking at your values is one practical step, and then calendaring, blocking time that's aligned with that. What's another practical step towards using time aligned with your values?
So, another practical step is to really be mindful of what you put on your calendar. So, sometimes people will use their calendar, but they'll block a whole big chunk of time and say work time. And I want them to get very specific. So, instead of saying, I'm going to work on this report for today, I want them to say very specifically, in these 2 hours, I'm going to work on brainstorming 5 ideas for this presentation. Or in this hour, I'm going to work on completing my final edit of my report. The problem with not being very, very specific with your blocks of time is that when you go to that block of time and you're looking at what's in front of you, the brain wants to be confused. So, just like we spoke about earlier, the primitive brain kicks in if there's any time for confusion. So, if you look at the calendar and it says work time, then the brain doesn't know what that means. And it just starts kind of like spinning on, oh, what should I do? Should I do this or should I do that? And it's not clear on the task at hand, and you end up wasting a lot of time. And so I want my clients to be very specific in how they schedule that block of time for work, for personal, for whatever it is. They need to be very clear. It's the same thing with personal time. Like if you're just saying personal time on your calendar, you get there and you're thinking, what should I do next? And we get very busy with social media and we go on our phones and we start scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And so I want you to kind of stop that. There's time for scrolling too. I'm not saying don't scroll, but you need to be more directed with how much time you want to spend scrolling on your social media.
Yeah, making those decisions ahead of time, going back to what you talked about before, really helps direct the brain in what to do. Because, yes, there's the part of what am I going to do? And it can answer with confusion, or it can answer with a flood of things to do that aren't necessarily aligned with your values or fit the timing of which you want projects finished, or even just your days to look. Anything last that you would like to offer our listeners today about time?
So let's talk about procrastination for just a moment. If the brain doesn't know what to do, it will very likely not do what you want it to do. So it will say things like, let me do it later, or let me do it another time, or this is very meaningless. I can do it tomorrow. And it's these sneaky, tiny little thoughts that are in the back of your mind that you don't even pick up sometimes. And so I teach you the skill of really paying attention in the moment so you can actually follow through and not procrastinate. And as you know, most of us have goals, most of us have a place that we want to get to. And to get to that place, we really need to live in each and every moment. And so, if we're able to live in each and every moment and really kind of be aware of our mind and of our thoughts, then we're able to take that step to move toward our goals.
Absolutely. Self talk matters. Those thoughts, whether they are conscious or subconscious, can either champion us forward or they can lead to procrastination and second guessing and doubt. So I love how you're calling that forward by saying we need to be present in the moment. We need to capture those thoughts and see what's pulling us in a direction if it's not the direction that we had planned to use our time for. It's exactly why I wrote Master Your Inner Dialogue. So give us your final thoughts on time.
Time is definitely an intentional practice that you get to decide on ahead of time. If you don't decide on your time, time will decide for you. And that takes you out of intentionality and out of living your purpose and living the life that you want to live in the moment.
If you don't decide on your time, time will decide for you. What a great way to close our episode today. Thank you, Dalit, so much for your time.
It's been my pleasure.
What will you take away from today's episode? Here are a few of my highlights. Time management starts with your values. If your calendar doesn't reflect your values, there's a disconnect. Identify your top 3 values and intentionally schedule time for what matters most, starting with self care. Plan specificity is key. A big work time block on your calendar leaves room for confusion and distraction. Instead, schedule detailed, specific tasks for your time blocks to eliminate decision fatigue and stay focused. Understand your brain's role in procrastination. The primitive brain avoids discomfort, it seeks pleasure, and it exerts minimal effort. To overcome procrastination, plan ahead with your prefrontal cortex and bring awareness to sneaky thoughts that cause delay. And if you want to master your inner dialogue, go grab Mastering Your Inner Dialogue at theselftrustcoach.com. The final highlight from today that I take away is to be present and intentional. Being in the moment, capturing unhelpful thoughts and redirecting them towards aligned actions is key. When you don't take charge of your time, time will take charge of you. Time is one of our most precious resources, and how we use it defines so much of our lives. As Dalit reminded us today, when you align your time with your values and make intentional decisions, you're not just managing your time, you're living a purposeful, fulfilling life. If this conversation resonated with you, be sure to check out Dalit's program, Take Control of Your Time. You can find all the details at thejewishlifecoach.com/mom time and via the links in the show notes. Thank you so much to Dalit Sharer for joining us and sharing her wisdom. And as always, remember, self-trust is the foundation for living the life you want. See you next time. The best way to get what you want is to grow your self-trust. And the best way to grow your self-trust is in going after what you want the right way. And the Self-Trust Lab is here to help you do just that. With the proven 3E success method, you'll cultivate unshakable self-trust while making what you want inevitable through practical tools, personalized methods, and master-level coaching. Let's turn self-trust into your superpower and success into your everyday reality. Join us today at theselftrustcoach.com/the Self-Trust Lab.